Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Oh, are you as horny as I am?
Hornier.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome in once again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Brown Knives Yeager M. And I realize this has been out for a while. Another one that I'm late to the game on, but it's, better late than never, because this thing, even though it's in such inconspicuous, plain wrapping, is quite simply one of the most exciting knives I've gotten in my hand, not just this year, but ever. There's something magical about this knife, and I hope I could convey it to you properly. There's something magical about this knife that once you put it in your hands, you're sold. You're completely sold. It's just phenomenal. So let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into it. What we're looking at here is the Yeager M in full titanium with a bead blasted finish on the titanium frames. It's an M390 blade. This is the flipper version. There's a flipper and non-flipper variation. It has a hollow grind with the belt satin, and it was made in 2022. This is as fresh gets. This is from the newest production that has been made. So I want to share with you the packaging really quick. This is going to be your zippered case. And look at this iridescent rainbow colored Ziploc baggie. Ooh, it's mesmerizing and trippy. Let's see what all is in there.
Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Ah, what a great Christmas.
And there is your certificate of authenticity. Shows everything. Well, not everything. It shows the basics of what you need to know. You know what model you bought, you know what your blade steel is, and you know that your frame is titanium instead of one of the micarta variations or one of the inlay variations. There are many variations to choose from. Card and stickers. Yes, it is indeed like Christmas. Oh, God, I have a really, really, really hard time with this because you can't just go out and get this knife. Sometimes I hate doing videos like this, but what I am going to tell you is this. Spoiler alert, this is absolutely hands down one of my favorite knives that I've ever experienced. And it's really weird to say that because it's a production knife, not a full custom. Brian obviously does make full customs. That's how he began. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And it's not very expensive. I mean, you're looking between $330 and $400 depending on the variation you choose. So it's hard to come out here and say, this is one of my favorite knives ever at any price range. It's just fantastic in its overall execution, every single thing that was done. Every decision that was made was the right friggin' decision. But it's hard to come out here and say this because They only come out in small batches. I don't even want to say small batches. They're pretty substantial batches. They just sell out very quickly. They don't come out often. When they do, his website is overloaded. It's very difficult to get one in your cart and make it to checkout. It's just one of those things. And there's a lot of brands that are like that are extraordinarily popular. And when they do a drop, there's cart sniping and there's hiccups with the website and website errors. And then honestly, there's too many people trying to get in on a limited supply of product. And that's just the way it is. So I apologize in advance for frustrating you, for getting you excited, potentially excited about a knife that's going to be very, very difficult to obtain. However, there are opportunities. They do come up for sale on his website. He does constantly make more runs. And people sometimes do sell these on the secondary market. So getting one won't be impossible. It will just be frustrating. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about some specs very quickly. Move that off to the side and put the specs right here as we're supposed to. What you're looking at is a titanium frame lock with an overall length of 7.6 inches. The blade length is, depending on where you measure it, 3¼ to 3½ inches. It is a 3½ inch overall blade, but you've got a 3¼ inch cutting edge. And it's beautifully hollow ground. It's made of M390, and you've got a flat ground swedge. That swedge adds a lot of personality to this blade. You got tie pivot collars. You've got a flat and flush pivot. That is one of my favorite features on this knife, and so few brands do this. I don't know why. You have a raised and crowned titanium spacer. People have erroneously said this is how you're able to fit that tall, massive blade into the handle. It's not hollowed out on the inside. That didn't change anything. This is just purely an aesthetic design choice. Let's see, what else am I missing here? All titanium hardware and clip, steel lock bar insert, ceramic detent, ceramic bearings, all the things that you would expect. You can buy this in a flipper variation or a non-flipper variation because you do have the window cut into the blade. You can flick it very easily. You don't need the flipper tab. And your price is $330 to $400 depending on the variation that you choose. Now, I feel extraordinarily fortunate to have this because of its limited nature. I'm also very fortunate because this is exactly the one that I wanted. I wanted the all titanium. I really do like the new run with the carbon fiber inserts. I believe I think they were Fet carbon inserts or turbo carbon, one of the two brands. Really nice inlays / onlays. With the camouflage carbon fiber. Actually, they're camo carbon. Very, very cool looking, but I really, really wanted the all titanium. And one of the things that I really love the most is feeling this pivot and looking at the knife from this angle. Seeing that perfectly flush pivot. I really, really dig the design aesthetic of this knife. Both sides are flush, beautifully done. Love the titanium pivot collars. If you want to add a little splash of additional personality, you can always have your pivot collars anodized, your hardware anodized, maybe even your clip anodized, and have a nice little two-tone effect going with some color. There is that raised and crowned backspacer, which looks good aesthetically, but it also feels good in the hand. You actually feel it just a little bit, and obviously it's not a hot spot because it's rounded. It's just a nice feeling. There's something about how it feels in the hand that I really, really like. I like pretty much everything about this knife. There's nothing to dislike. Now, for those wondering, yes, this is a production version of his custom, and they are made by Riot. That means you're going to be getting an incredible action, you're going to be getting a razor sharp blade, you're going to be getting great heat treating, you're going to get high grade finishing. This is one of those knives that becomes problematic for the custom-made knife market because it blurs the line between production and custom so well that I'm not saying don't order or don't attempt to buy a custom Brian Brown knife. That's not what I'm saying at all. But making a generic comparison between this Riot production knife and most any other custom knife in a configuration like this with these materials that would be, let's say, $500 to $700, I would rather have this. This is every bit as good as almost anybody's custom. It is consistently perfect. The detent is absolute fucking magical. It is a perfect detent. The hollow grind is so thin that when it flips out and it hits the blade stop, the blade sings with harmonics. Now, the sound won't pick up on my microphone, but there is a ting right as it locks up, right as it hits that blade stop. And it's just friggin' magical. I also really love the medium size. He does basically a small, medium, large, if you want to put it that way, or a regular, a medium, and a small. And there's something about this size that I really, really like. Normally, I don't like my pinky being right at the very end of the frame, but it feels great. Now, if you wanted a little bit more room on the handle and you wanted to be able to choke up a little bit, get the non-flipper variation. Honestly, what I would have done is I just would have, and this is some of the designs that I have in development with a few different production companies. I've done this by designing it where the frame comes down and completely hides the flipper tab. So that would be a flush surface there. So you could actually choke up there and you wouldn't feel the flipper tab being in your way. The forward finger troll is a bit small. I mean, I could fit my pinky in there, but it's a bit small. But I really haven't noticed it trying to cut into my finger yet. But I also have not done any hardcore cutting with this. I really wanted the finish to look as new as possible for doing the photography and review. And honestly, that's why I didn't wait till next week to do this review. It's because I want to start carrying this immediately. It's only been in the pocket a couple of times. It has not gone out and done anything strenuous. I really want to start carrying this knife, so I'm getting the review done now so that I can start carrying it. I am in absolute lust, true love with this knife. And it's very hard for me to sit here and not just gush and guffaw over this knife because it's almost like I just want to sit here and make animalistic noises instead of actually talking about it. That's how wonderful it is. And I don't know if seeing it in video and in pictures really gives you the true sense of how fantastic this knife really is. But it is. It is something very, very special. Look at the beautiful diamond right there from the swedge grind down to the primary bevels. I love that shape. And then look how the blade sweeps in to this very, very, very narrow hollow grind. So it is not going to be the toughest edge you've ever had. A flat ground knife going down to maybe 15 thousandths might be a bit better for chopping or mistakenly hitting a staple as you're cutting down a box. But this is made to be a slicer. This is about 12 to 13 thousandths behind the edge. So it is very, very slicey, and you're still going to have some room to sharpen over time as well and still have a thin edge because that thinness goes up for quite a bit of way. So yeah, it's meant to be used. It's very clearly meant to be used. So imagine this. Imagine being, just like you are right now, a lover of knives. Okay, imagine being a lover of knives, watching a couple of YouTube videos on how to make knives, and then falling down the rabbit hole, consuming hour after hour of in-depth tutorials until you feel this strong urge to just take the leap and begin making knives yourself. Well, that's exactly how Brian got started. From learning the basics of making fixed blades from Go Knives, which is GOGH, which is a fantastic channel. I've watched a lot of his videos. Seems like a really, really swell dude. and then stepping over into folders with the excellent tutorials by my good friend Mike Stewart of Ecom Knives. I've known Mike for a long time. We've even collaborated and made knives together. He's a fantastic guy. And his step-by-step tutorials, both on, actually all three, on fixed blade knives, on chef knives, and on folders. He teaches you every single thing that you could ever possibly want to know. So I definitely commend Brian for having a great inspiration right there. So Brian soaked it all in and then just mastered this work extraordinarily quickly. Then he took his most popular models and made production knives out of them. So somebody, it doesn't matter what your station in life, what your income level is, you have an opportunity to own one of his knives. By the way, I love that he's got his logo in the lock bar cutout instead of a bunch of billboards on the blade and shit like that. I mean, like I said, every decision made on this knife was the right decision. From the finishes to the flush pivot to the exact way that the perimeter of the frame is chamfered, to the raised and crowned back spacer, to the shape of the flipper tab, the type of jimping on the flipper tab, the blade stock thickness, because honestly, if this was any thinner, I don't think I would like it as much. If it were any thicker, I think it might be a bit unwieldy for EDC. The shape of the window in the blade cutout. Every decision that was made was the right decision. The size, the weight, the feel of it, the deployment methods that are being used, the price point, the choice of factory. I know he used WE knives for the very first run. I haven't handled that, couldn't tell you what the quality was like, but going with Riot is always going to be a solid choice. Let me give you some ideas here, some comparisons of this knife in reality to some of my favorite knives. One, obviously, you guys know that I love my... Oops, I just dropped my scale right off my table here. I love my Varga Knives VBR. It's still one of my favorite knives. Also made by Riot. And you see that the Yeager is considerably smaller in every respect, in the handle size, in the blade length, and in the overall size as well. And while the VBR already feels very compact in the handle, the blade feels big for what you've got in its overall size. The Yeager is going to feel compact. It's going to feel like a compact little tank in your hand. Don't think that this is a big knife. It's one of those weird knives that when you see it on video, you don't get it. I've seen reviewers hold this knife and it looks like an absolute friggin' monster. Maybe they have little toddler hands. I don't know. And then I've seen some people hold it and it looks like they're holding a little QSP penguin. It's the weirdest knife on video. It is very, very, very hard to translate what this knife is. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you that comparison. Let's bring out a QSP penguin. A lot of you guys bought that after I made that video, so a lot of you have that knife for comparison. As you see, it is larger than the penguin, but not really by a hell of a lot, but just enough to feel a little bit more substantial. I consider this a really good compact daily carry. Another one of my absolute favorites, another one that I can't stop gushing about, is my EMP EDC Nimble. This is the standard Nimble size. And by the way, you'll be seeing a Nimble X video very, very soon because my Nimble X is in the air. It's on the way to me and I can't wait to get it. Very, very close in size. Maybe an eighth of an inch in overall length difference. But the blade is longer, taller, heavier. I don't want to say heavier because it's a very thin hollow grind, but it is more substantial. Let's give you guys a good look at the thickness there, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It doesn't look like it's a huge difference, but it actually is. And you'll feel that when the blade deploys, and you hear it in the blade deployment as it tings. One of my choices for what may end up being the knife of the year, which is the Avian Knives Atlas. It's a little bit smaller overall than the Atlas. When we bring them pivot to pivot, You see it, the blades are nearly identical in their length, so the difference really is going to be in the length of the handle. Obviously, this being slimmer and much, much lighter in weight, easier to carry. I still don't consider the Yeager anything but an EDC. It is an EDC knife. And while it is substantial and thick, I mean, it's not ridiculous. That's ridiculous. The PMP Alpha Beast, and I know a lot of you guys are still waiting for the pre-order. It doesn't exist technically yet. But yet, that's ridiculous. This knife could damn near fit inside of that knife. So don't think that it's crazy, crazy overbuilt, because it's not. It will feel substantial. It will feel tank-like. It doesn't feel wimpy at all, but it's not overbuilt. This is a daily carry friggin' dream knife. Let me give you some close-ups here and let you see the beauty that I see in the knife every time I look at it. That belt satin on that hollow grind is flat out perfection. It is done so, so well. I love the top swedge on there. It adds a lot of character to this blade. Without that swedge, would I love it as much? I'll be honest with you, I really don't know. But I sure love the character that it adds. The window cutout is great. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more chamfering. They did a very, very light chamfer. I don't know if it's going to show up on camera. I don't even know if the camera is going to focus well on it. But there is a light chamfer on it. A little bit more chamfering would have been nice. That's really the only nitpick I have on this entire knife. The plunge area is great. It looks fantastic. There's that flat pivot with the pivot collar. Again, great choice. Having the pivot collar on there and a flat, plain pivot really adds to the tool-like look of this overall design. The chamfering all the way around the handle feels fantastic and allows it to still be a slab-sided titanium knife that won't be uncomfortable. There's the inside pockets. You see they've done a really great job skeletonizing the insides of the frame. So it's going to be as lightweight as it can be for what it is. There's that back spacer again. I kind of dig how they contoured the pocket clip. I don't see why. It's a flat-bodied frame, but it's cool. There's something about it, and maybe it was just for how it feels in the hand, because even though you do feel the clip, it's soft. There's no hot spot to it. And maybe that's attributed to that slight convex on the surface of the clip. Normally, I'd want to see a blind screwed clip. Normally, I wouldn't want to see so much hardware. But you know what? It works for this design. It looks good. Again, it's a small tank-like little knife, and all that hardware looks good. I would have said, hey, utilize just having the hardware on this side and not on this side. But no, it looks good. It works for this design, and you don't often get a chance to realistically say that. Again, the Brown Knives logo in the relief cut for the lock bar. Every decision made on this knife was the right one. Part of what makes the action feel so good on this is the strength of the detent, and part of the strength of the detent is going to come from the strength of the lock bar tension. And why I mention that is, you might be looking at this going, well, why doesn't the blade drop free? It's extraordinarily smooth, and the action is amazing, but it doesn't drop free. It's only because of the lock bar tension pushing that detent against the detent track of the blade. So it doesn't allow it to drop completely free. You can shake it in, no worries at all. But as I have said for years, drop shutty action does not indicate the quality of the knife. It is only a visual representation in review form, because you can't be here to hold the knife and feel how smooth that action actually is. So it's my way of being able to demonstrate it. Yes, I realized I've ruined it for a lot of people, because ever since I started doing it and then other people started doing it, next thing you know, everybody was doing it on every Facebook video, every Instagram video, they were doing this goofy shit. That's not how, at least how I close a knife. I close a knife like this. When I'm actually using my knives, not on video for review purposes, I'm closing it like a normal human being. But to demonstrate to you the smoothness of a knife, that's just something that, I typically do, so you get an idea of how it's going to feel when you actually get it. But it's not an indication of quality. Let's get that weight done. Pick my scale up off the floor that I dropped earlier and get an idea of just how substantial it really is. 4.3 ounces. It's not as heavy as your mind is telling you it is when it's in your hand. Here's a good example. Against the VBR. That's heavier. And it's got micarta scales. It's not even full, thick titanium all the way throughout like this is. And it's still heavier. Let's see how it compares. Here we are once again. 4.3. 3.7. Only a little bit heavier than the smaller Nimble. Just for shits and giggles, in case you forgot. It's a full pound. Okay. Enough jacking around and clowning around. This is already turning into a 25-minute video, and I don't want to do that to you, but honestly, if we were hanging out right now, we were sitting down having a couple of scotches and a cigar, I could literally sit here and talk about this knife for an hour and not feel winded and not feel like I've run out of anything interesting to say. It is absolutely and in every way one of the best knives I have ever owned, period, at any price point. Which I'm going to tell you right now hurts me because now I'm going to own multiples of this. Just like I'm going to own multiples of this one because I really do love it that much. There are some knives that make that kind of impact on you. I'm going to own more than one. I'm looking at probably 3 to 4 of these. I love this all titanium. I know it's going to get immediate snail trails as I carry it, so it won't be as pretty as it is right now, and that is just fine by me. I think it's going to age really, really nicely with a few character marks on it. I want to have the all black and anodize the pivot collar and the hardware, not the pocket clip, because the pocket clip is bead blasted like the frame is, so it's not going to have the same finish as the high satin or high machine finish on the collars and the hardware. But I'm certainly going to have an all black or probably blue or purple on the anodizing. And I think I want one of the inlay models with one of the new colors. There's like a sunset something variation with oranges and yellows that I don't know why, but I find it really attractive. And then I want to buy one just to send out to Fanatic Edge and do something ridiculous. So this is going to be one of the knives that will be a constant player in my pocket in some variation. I am absolutely, thoroughly, completely addicted to this knife. It's one of those knives that when I walk through the room that it's sitting in, if I'm not carrying it in my pocket, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to play with it. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to flick it and I'm going to flip it and I'm going to sit there and just play with it. Because I love the feeling of that detent breaking. I love the smoothness of that action. And I love the harmonics of that ting as it locks up that I so wish you could hear. And you're not going to. I really wish you could. It just doesn't show up as easily. And it's barely noticeable in person, but you do hear it. I love the way that it just feels in the hand. The exact thickness of this knife, the exact thickness of the overall thickness in the hand for someone like me at my size is absolute perfection. I've only cut a few times with it, but I got to tell you right now, zip, it just goes right through whatever you're cutting. It's going to have a delicate tip. I wouldn't go abusing that tip at all because, again, that does come down to be quite thin. So I wouldn't go abusing that tip at all. That's not really what this knife is going to be. Hey, don't touch the edge either because holy shit, that's sharp. It's not really what this knife is designed for. But yeah, This is, to me, one of the most perfect packages for EDC. The weight, the feel, the size, the blade grind, everything about it, the fidgetiness, the fidget factor of it, the enjoyment of deployment. Holy shit, I'm going to trademark that shit. The enjoyment of deployment. Y'all can't use that. Fuck it. No. You need my permission to use enjoyment of deployment. I'm going to put a trademark on that shit. Don't even try it, Lefty. Nope. Don't try it, Metal Complex. Enjoyment of deployment. That's mine. Forever. Oh God, I feel like I'm high or drunk or something. It must just be the dopamine. It must be the euphoria of playing with this knife for the past 30 minutes. All right, I'm going to end this. It's just going to get repetitive now at this point. Please do join me on Patreon to help support the channel so I can get more cool stuff like this to bring out to you on a regular basis. And you get a chance to win cool free knives. I have 2 right now that are up for the next giveaway that I'll be doing here in the next week. So it's not too late. You could still sign up for as little as $5 a month and get a chance to win 2 badass knives on this particular drawing. Oh, all right. I'm going to go play with my new knife. I can't stop playing with it now. I'm going to go do it in private. I'll catch you guys on the next video.